For those who have not had a chance to meet, my name is Andy. I am one of the co-founders and Chief Community Officer here at Seismic. Seismic is an international team of sustainability experts, and we're on a mission to help businesses prosper by becoming an increasingly impactful and influential force for good in the world. Our team helps our clients across B Corp and strategy, net zero, and communicating their impact in a credible and authentic way. We've had the great fortune in our time as a business to work with a number of outstanding teams and brands from a variety of sectors, from B2B to B2C, and different sizes and regions. We've got, we're talking today about specifically for the food and beverage industry and sector, of which a number of our clients are listed up here. And we'll be hearing from my co-founder and our Chief Impact Officer, Emilie, who has helped directly, along with our wider team, support companies like Innocent Drinks, The Collective, Dash Waters, Pucka Tea, Heyman's Group, Eckes Granini, Pip and Nut, just to name a few. In addition to hearing from Amy and her breadth and depth of experience, we've got the great fortune to be joined by two wonderful purpose-driven professionals from Tony's Chocolonely and Innocent Drinks. So we're going to spend the first 15 minutes or so here. Amy's going to be walking us through the B Corp landscape and benefits for becoming a B Corp. Amy is one of the world's leading B Corp experts. She helped B Lab UK launch the community and the movement in the UK back in 2015 and has been instrumental in helping to grow that movement and community across the UK and Europe. And then we've got the great fortune to hear from Emilie Stephenson from Innocent Drinks and Vlora Sahili from Tony's Chocolonely. Amy will lead a little fireside chat with them to hear from them and their experience, leveraging the B Corp framework to help their organizations become a force for good. And then we'll be sure to leave some time at the end for your questions. So please do, throughout, if something comes to mind that you'd like to hear from Amy or Emilie or Vlora about, throw it in the chat, and we'll use that as kind of a running list at the end for a Q&A session. Thank you for joining us this morning. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Amy.
Thank you so much, Andy, and thank you to all of you for joining us this morning. It's really lovely to see such a great variety of people on the call, some familiar faces and old friends, and some new friends and faces. So yeah, thank you for being here, and looking forward to taking you through a little bit of the B Corp landscape in regards to the food and drink industry. So if we move forward, we've been kind of supporting B Corps and companies on their B Corp journey in the food and beverage industry for quite a long time. And it's been really interesting to see the growth of this kind of subset of the B Corp movement. I think oftentimes a lot of people tend to associate the B Corp certification with the food and drink industry and with consumer-facing products, because these are the famous B Corps, you know, like Innocent and Tony's Chocolonely and Ben & Jerry's, etc. These are the kind of the brands that come to mind when you think about B Corp, because they are so well loved, because they do a great job of talking about it externally, and because, of course, these are the consumer-facing brands that we think about. But actually, when we kind of take a second to zoom out, so there's 245 B Corps in the UK who are in the food and drink sector. And actually what that works out to is 13% only of all the B Corps in the UK. So it's, you know, not an insignificant portion, but when you think about it, there's a lot of other consumer-facing brands, but also actually 80% about of the UK B Corp movement is B2B brands. So, you know, still a relatively small subset. And actually if you zoom out a little bit further, that's just around 3 or just under 3% of all of the food and drink brands in the UK who are actually B Corps. So if we think about that in regards to the kind of growth curve, and where that kind of sits in regards to what these 3% of the food and drink industry represent. We're still kind of in the early adopter stage, even though it feels like there are a lot of B Corps in the food and drink industry. We're still kind of in this early adopter stage. So it means that, you know, as somebody in this industry, if you're still thinking about going for B Corp, it's definitely something that it's the right time to move on it, because you can kind of get in there while you're still in the early adopter, early majority phase, rather than kind of waiting to become almost left behind by, you know, actually feeling like you're one of the only ones in the industry who hasn't certified yet. There's been the great leaders like the brands we have with us today, and some of the ones that you see here. They've gone ahead, they've got kind of the proof of concept, they've been the canaries, so to speak, and now you've kind of got this great pathway that you can follow them on, but still kind of be taking somewhat of a bit of a leadership space in the sector. So apart from having that kind of claim to being a bit of a leader in the space, is many benefits to becoming a B Corp. And of course, the core benefits of becoming a B Corp are that it helps you to understand and improve your impact and keep you accountable to maintaining that impact and continuous improvement. And that's really what it's all about. But there are a number of other benefits as well. And so to kind of speak to some of the ones that are benefits for the food and drink industry, we've got a few laid out here. So first one being that the kind of consumer demands that we're seeing. So we know that 63% of consumers want to, according to the Edelman Trust Barometer, they want to and do buy from or advocate for brands that are kind of aligned with their values and beliefs. And consumers are becoming a lot more savvy these days. They know what they're looking for, and they're kind of aware that some of the brands out there are greenwashing, and they want to have some kind of an indicator that they're doing the right thing. So I think the B Corp certification acts as that kind of stamp of approval that helps consumers to know that they're moving in the right direction. And maybe it's not a perfect company, but they can feel pretty good about purchasing from a B Corp. And to that point, retailers are really starting to pick up on this and really get behind the B Corp movement, which is very exciting. So as the B Corp movement is growing, retailers are really kind of getting on board and helping with the messaging, because of course they feed each other. The more brands that become B Corps, the more awareness there is, the more that supermarkets, etc., help to kind of make consumers aware of what B Corps are, the more demand there'll be. And so it's a great kind of self-fulfilling circle there. And so we've seen companies like Ocado, Waitrose, the third picture here is WH Smith, but also people like Holland & Barrett, Boots. They have both online shops and in B Corp month and at certain other times of the year, physical shelves and educational pieces within the shop explaining to consumers what B Corps are and kind of why they should buy from them. And actually Ocado, their B Corp aisle is growing constantly. They've got over 1,100 products from over 35 different brands. And so it's a great way, for your brand to be featured and celebrated in a special, specific place. As well as this, thinking internally now, it attracts great talent. So we know that millennials and Gen Z and not only millennials and Gen Z, but people who have been working in their careers for a long time and they kind of want something more. People want to work for purpose-driven companies whose values align with theirs. And we're seeing 70+% of employees demanding this. And what's really cool is that the purpose-driven employees that are kind of wanting to work for these companies are then, not only are they coming in as great talent, but they're staying. So they're 6.5 times more likely to report higher resilience, and they're 6 times more likely to stay in the company. So it's about the quality of talent as well as the quantity of it. What's also cool is that of B Corps that were recruiting, over 70% of them had candidates who mentioned B Corp in the interview process. You know, at Seismic, we're a B Corp, and it's something that we hear regularly. We want to work for you because you're a B Corp. And so it's super powerful in that sense. And then thinking about the kind of wider stakeholder set, what's really lovely as well is that it enables, as well as internally, it enables this great way of extending your stakeholder set and your community. And there's a lot of opportunity to kind of foster collaboration within the B Corp community. So some of the ways that you can do this, there's kind of endless ways, and we see some really nice innovation within it. But B Lab UK is really great at fostering and creating a lovely community. Part of the way that they do that is by facilitating working groups. So these are working groups that are really led by B Corps for B Corps and kind of supported by B Lab. And there's a number of different topics out there that you can join in to a working group about. Some of the ones that are kind of relevant to this sector, we've got circular economy, plastics and packaging, food waste, regenerative agriculture. And what we see, which is great, is that within those working groups, sometimes you have a range of sectors. So you might be from a totally different sector than somebody, but you say, hey, we both have this problem about plastics. It's not exactly the same, but we both are working towards the same goals. Let's come together. But sometimes as well, it's actually people from the same industry and actually can be competitors technically who don't really care. They're like, let's just come together and work smarter and faster towards this shared goal that we have. So it's really wonderful to see that. There's a B Corp Beauty Coalition, which do that kind of to an even higher degree. And it would be wonderful to see a B Corp Food and Drink Coalition. So if any of you in the audience are thinking about that, you know, reach out. I'm sure there's a lot of people with the appetite for that. No pun intended on appetite. And then there's great B Corp collaborations as well. So just a couple of examples, Tony's Chocolonely and Ben & Jerry's, I'm sure you'll have seen, they've come together to create both an ice cream and a chocolate bar shared, and Tony's is influencing Ben & Jerry's to kind of sign up to their same kind of no slavery commitment within the supply chain. Also, Ella's Kitchen, Pucka Tea, our lovely client, Cook, Lily's Kitchen, another lovely client, they've come together to create an employee mentoring scheme where their employees can choose from a wider pool of talent to be able to mentor and work together. Those are just some of the examples. And then the other thing that has been a really great trend to see grow is an attraction of investors and also some preferential financing. So 70% of B Corps, we were laughing before, there's a lot of 70% stats. That is just a coincidence. We didn't pick the number 70 and build everything around that. But 70% of B Corps who have been seeking equity finance secured all or more than their required amount. And that's versus 56% of the wider SME population. We at Seismic, we work with a lot of private equity firms and a lot of large multinationals, and there has just been an increasing over the last 2-3 years, an increasing focus on either acquiring B Corps or taking companies within their portfolios and encouraging them to become B Corps. Some of the standout examples are Danone and Unilever. There are two multinationals who've been really investing heavily in B Corps and encouraging their existing companies to certify. Danone is actually the biggest B Corp in the world. 74% of their global sales come from certified B Corps, and they're working towards 100% in the next few years. Nestle as well have 4 B Corps in their portfolio at least, and counting and helping more to go on that journey. And something that's recently come out actually is that Tesco have started to offer, in conjunction with the Santander platform, they've started to offer preferential financing rates, which incentivizes their suppliers to improve their performance because it sets their rates based on carbon data disclosure, emissions reductions, progress against sustainability goals. So there's really starting to be a fiscal link to performing strongly in ESG and being a B Corp, as well as some of the other things that we're seeing here. And then all of this just comes together to fuel growth. You know, all of the things that we've been over obviously contribute to a company being stronger, growing faster, being more healthy. And so B Corps grew at a rate of 26% for a turnover, grew at a rate of 26% as compared to the national average of 5% between 2017 and 2021. And similarly, between 2018 and 21, the headcount growth was 14% for B Corps as compared to only 1% for the national average, especially considering that that is through, you know, 1 or 2 years of COVID. Really impressive. Sorry about the guest star there. So, and the stats we see here, this is a study by Circula and Helios, who looked at the kind of top 25% of companies in each of these groups. So we've got B Corp brands, emerging brands, average brands, big brands. And as you can see, B Corps are performing significantly higher than all of the other brands. Which is great to see the kind of the stats behind what we understand. So just to give, before I hand over the mic, so to speak, to our wonderful guest stars, not the dog, Vlora and Emilie, just to give some examples of B Corps who are kind of leading the way. And there's so many, so it's hard to choose just a few, but we have, you know, Dashwater, who are a lovely client of ours. They have done a great job of kind of aligning their actions and their business model together. So they make drinks out of wonky fruit and veg, which would have gone to waste otherwise, but they don't just stop there in tackling food waste. They also have really meaningful, deep partnerships with charities. So they work with the Felix Project to align on their mission of fighting food waste and poverty. So that is kind of a way that they've built this into their day-to-day, not just a kind of little bit of volunteering here or there. It's kind of within their business model and the way that they behave. 100% of their employees have volunteered in the last year. Then, of course, the wonderful Innocent. So we will hear more about this in a bit, but Innocent and Tony's, they've come together along with a bunch of other companies to really get behind the Better Business Act, which is an initiative in conjunction with B Lab, kind of campaign to change the way that the companies act in the UK is structured to require all companies to consider stakeholders and not just shareholders when acting on behalf of their companies. So you kind of using your voice and your influence for the greater good and really systemic change. Internally, Innocent have also built in their ESG performance to their company scorecard, which means that every single employee, from the most senior to the most junior, every employee's bonus is linked partially to their ESG performance, whether that be sometimes to do with their B Corp score, sometimes to do with their carbon reduction plans, etc. Which again is a really great way to get people behind it by linking it to their money. And finally, thinking about kind of how you kind of create a wider influence throughout your supply chain. Ella's Kitchen is a really good example of this, where they've used the B Impact assessment over the years to kind of engage their suppliers and encourage their suppliers to use the BIA and in some cases to actually go forward and certify in order to improve their performance. So one of their biggest suppliers, Stella Fruit, has certified recently and you know said this is because of Ella's. So again, really a lot of great opportunity there to use your influence to inspire a wider change. So without further ado, I will stop talking so much and share the stage here. So I'm very happy to introduce Vlora. So Vlora Sahili has one of the best titles I've heard, which is the Baroness du Cocoa, which is also known as the head of sales for UK and Ireland at Tony's Chocolonely. I'm sure we all know, but Tony's exists to make 100% slave-free the norm in chocolate. And that's not just their own chocolate, but all chocolate worldwide. And really, they describe themselves, which I think is lovely. They describe themselves as an impact company that makes chocolate, not the other way around. They've been a B Corp since 2013. They were one of the first B Corps in Europe to become certified. And very impressively, they recertified last year for, I think, the 4th time with a score of 125 points. So that's pretty epic. Vlora has been part of the Tony's team since the brand launched in the UK over 4.5 years ago. And apart from that, very impressively, she's spent the last 12 years working for not 1 or 2, but 3 certified B Corps. So she has a wealth of experience in this space and really knows what it's like to work for a B Corp. And then we have the lovely Emilie Stephenson, who is the head of Force for Good, another great title in the UK for Innocent Drinks. Again, as I'm sure we all know, Innocent's purpose is to make natural, delicious food and drink that helps people and the planet to live well and die old. And they've always pushed themselves to do business the right way. We have been delighted to be working with them since 2017 when they first said they want to become a B Corp. They certified in 2018 with 92.5 points and then recertified in 21. They aimed for 100 points and recertified with 105 points, smashing that target. And actually, they're, not to embarrass Innocent, but they're one of just a few B Corps in the world who are both $1 billion brand, but also have a score of over 100. So again, pretty epic performance there. And Emilie herself has been with Innocent for more than 15 years and in the UK head of Force for Good role for the last 2 years. I have had the pleasure of being on a few panels with Emilie. And I know, and anyone else who has met her will know, that Emilie's incredibly passionate and committed and always really brings a great thought-provoking point of view to the table. So I'm really happy to be speaking with you both today. And I'm going to just jump into the first question. So obviously I've just been speaking about some of the benefits of being a B Corp, company growth, resilience, attracting retailers and talent. It would be great to hear directly from the source, like, has this been your experience? Can you maybe share some examples of these or other things that you've noticed in your businesses?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. Hello, everyone. Thanks for the intro. I think the main thing to remember when we look at all of this is that I think that these days, and maybe it's always been the case, but even more these days, people want quick fixes, quick badges. They want to know relatively rapidly whether something is good or bad. The reality is much more complicated, but what B Corp does at every level, and we saw it with Emi's presentation, whether it's internal or external, is to give that seal of approval saying, actually, I'm dealing people who haven't just been marking their own homework. There's someone else externally who has certified them. And that in itself is really, really precious. There are loads of other companies who are doing loads of great stuff, but by the time you've talked about it, then, you know, the person you're talking to often wants to talk about something else. And B Corp enables that really quick seal of approval, which, and Emi said it, at every level, from when we're talking to people internally to when we're talking to our customers, and in our case, it's a lot of the retailers, it helps with that. I would just add that it's not just recruiting the talent, but indeed, I've been there in interviews where people have gone, I want to work for Innocent because of your values, because of B Corp, but also retaining that talent. And maybe it's not just me, and I've been Innocent for nearly 17 years, and it's not just because it's B Corp, but it's true that it really helps galvanize the troops behind one's, you know, when you're recertifying, you've got one aim and it brings everyone together. It makes everyone proud. And that is something that's really, really important today in a world where it's harder and harder to keep that talent. So I just add that to the people bit, but I'm sure Vlora's got more to say as well.
Yeah, I'd say from my perspective, when we joined Tony's 4.5 years ago, it was 4 of us. And we've now grown to a team of about 22, 23, and half of the team sits within my team. So I was lucky enough to kind of interview and hire, you know, the people in my team. And I'd say, anecdotally, maybe 1 in 2 people have mentioned us being a B Corp as a reason for wanting to join us. And I look back kind of, you know, 12, 13 years ago when I joined Ecover, and I found out about B Corp and the B Corp family and the movement and what it means to be a B Corp. I'd say that the B Corp badge has kind of grown in kind of awareness and credibility And yes, so I'd say it's definitely become something that people recognize and value and trust. So yeah, I would say it has been a real advantage for us being a B Corp to attract the best talent and retain them too.
There was a question in the chat about how many consumers, what was the awareness of B Corp? And on this one, I'm going to use my no bullshit cap, which is that I've seen lots of numbers, including some crazily, I think, really high numbers around awareness of B Corp. I don't know, maybe Amy has, I don't know what the general public is. I just know that it's really growing massively. And I can't vouch here to say B Corp is the reason people buy Innocent. We know that there is so many reasons why people buy products. I can just say again that having that stamp that's saying, you know, you're doing things the right way can only help in that journey. But maybe, Amy, you've got the stats in terms of awareness of general public. I think I've seen some stats, which is maybe awareness amongst, you know, privileged West London people, then it's really high. Awareness around the whole population is probably not so high, but it's growing.
I think that's a really good point, Emilie. I would need to check this. My head is telling me, I think the latest that I heard was about 30%, 34. We've got Kyle Sue, the expert from VLab UK. Yeah, so 34% of consumers, which is pretty high considering about 2 or 3 years ago, that was about 8%. So I think that's higher than in the US, for example, where B Corp has actually been around for a lot longer. And I think some of that is, you know, to do with the great recognizable, well-loved brands like you guys being out there and kind of spreading awareness as to what B Corp is. So it's great to see. But there's also, you know, as you say, it kind of depends on your audience. I was presenting to a group of accountants recently where there's maybe about 3% of them knew what B Corp was. So it depends. But I wanted to ask you guys, kind of speaking of to the points that you both raised around kind of how your employees love B Corp and it resonates with them. Apart from them just enjoying it, how do you kind of work on integrating B Corp into the way that you behave and at that continuous improvement piece? Because I know that both of you, as I mentioned, have recertified over the last few years. 105 points Innocent, 125 points Tony's. How have you kind of embedded the purpose and B Corp into your business to help to maintain not only that appreciation, but actually that kind of mindset for continuous improvement internally?
We've got something quite specific, which please steal with pride. We've got a group of beekeepers, excuse the pun, but and they are people in all areas of the business who will have something to do with the BI, with the B impact assessment, basically having something to do with when we recertify, making sure that we get as many points. And that means that within each team, you've got people who are not only accountable, but who feel really passionately that they want to drive the business forward. So they are incentivized at each meeting, and I think they meet once every 3 months to come up with a list of recommendations that they would do in their area to, you know, ultimately for us to become a better business and then for us to get a better score the next time. And because the B impact assessment is so helpful, because it is, you know, in a way it's a tick list, it can really help them work with how they do things. So beekeepers would be the main way that we do it.
And I guess for us at Tony's, it's quite an interesting one because we've got obviously offices in different parts of the world. 2023 marked a decade of us being certified. So Amy, you mentioned in the introduction, we were the first chocolate company in Europe to certify and the second company in the Netherlands. And yeah, we've just reached our highest ever score of 125. And I think we really use the B Corp assessment as a sort of holistic way to progress and kind of like create ongoing improvement. And I think it also keeps us on our toes in the sense that we're doing a lot of things right, and people recognize us for being a good chocolate brand, not always knowing what it means, but we see it as a journey to kind of continuously look at our blind spots and where our gaps might be. And I think the B Corp assessment makes it really easy to kind of stay targeted on the things that where we can move the needle. And it really is embedded in everything that we do. So, yeah.
It's great. And I use both of you guys very often as examples of, best practice of what it means to be a B Corp. So it's wonderful to be able to hear straight from you.
It also shares the load, because I think it is, let's be clear, there is quite a lot of work in getting all the documents together when you're doing the certification. So it just means it doesn't hold on one person, which is the other piece of advice I would have, is make sure that you've got as many friends within your business as possible, because ultimately it's quite a lot of work to do.
So important. Yeah. So important that it is something that is, shared across the whole business and isn't just living within one person's mind or job role, because when that person inevitably moves on to the next role or something like that, it gets lost and you have to start again. So it's got to be kind of broad across the whole business. Speaking of challenging projects, Emilie, in 2021, Innocent moved from kind of being fully outsourced manufacturing to opening up 250 million carbon neutral factory, also known as the blender, where you're manufacturing some of your juices. What was your kind of decision making behind moving that in-house, and how did you, I know you all worked so hard on kind of building both social and environmental considerations into that project. Can you speak to that and kind of what wins you've seen since that switch?
Yeah, it was a long project in the making. I think it was about 8 years beforehand, which is interesting because the factory's in the Netherlands, and a lot of journalists have gone, oh, Innocent going to the Netherlands because of Brexit. That's not the case. We went to the Netherlands primarily for an ecological reason, which is actually that's where all our fruit arrives, in the port of Rotterdam. So it made sense as our company grew across Europe to just reduce food miles and to have the factory based where all the fruit arrives, as opposed to having various different factories all over Europe and then having to transport fruit or bottles at various points. So that was the first point. And as always, these things, it's a mix of ecological and economical. Ultimately, it's a long-term investment because it's quite a hefty investment, but in due course, being able to produce our own bottles, and it will never be all, it will be about 70 to 80% maximum capacity, will have both a financial benefit, but also a sustainability benefit. And I think the thing to say is that these things take a lot of time, and although we opened the first bottle in 2021, we're still not at maximum capacity. So if you ask me, which you might do, what is it actually meant for your B Corp score, for your carbon footprint, it's in the making at the moment, but these things are longer term than just 18 months. What it does mean for the B Corp score, though, and for those around you who are in manufacturing, is that we are now technically in another side. So we're not just the brand, we're the manufacturer, which is even more complex, but rightly so. So we're already thinking about when we recertify, how does it work being in a slightly different category? And yeah, so typically our beekeepers, and we've got beekeepers in our factory, that's what they're also concerned with.
Yeah, exactly. So not only does it make it more challenging because you've got the wider scope of facilities to recognize, but you also have now a wider set of questions to recognize that. And
wider set of people. It's a completely different workforce. So it's brought, it's brought a whole new interesting thoughts. And actually B Corp has been, again, really helpful in having that framework and being able to, for us to know what to concentrate on when you're looking at a factory and not just a brand.
Perfect. Well, speaking of kind of innovative moves and changes, Vlora, Tony's has always been so amazing at kind of putting your mission front and center. I think everybody I'm sure a very high percentage of people who know Tony's know your kind of mission and what you're all about. But what I've been so impressed with recently is your kind of latest and very strong example of this, which is the Tony's Mission Lock, which was announced last month, which actually embeds and fully safeguards Tony's sustainability ambitions into the DNA of the business. Can you kind of talk more about this new future-proof legal structure and how it all works?
Yeah, sure. It's something that I'm personally very proud of and very excited to see it sort of like continue and hopefully like generate interest and, people copying what we do. So I think it's a world's first. And as an impact company, we wanted to ensure that all the hard work that everyone has put into Tony's Chocolonely since the brand started doesn't get undone with change of leadership. So we've introduced a new future-proof legal structure called Tony's Mission Lock, and it's essentially a legal structure that gives a golden share in Tony's, and it's kind of like fully separate and independent entity that's overseen by what we call mission guardians. So there's 3 of them. The first one is Seth Goldman. So he's the founder of Honesty and chairman of Beyond Meat. Then there's Anneville Dijkstra. She's very well known at Tony's. So she's our ex co-captain. So she was heavily involved in the making of our 5 sourcing principles, and is just really knowledgeable on everything that we do from an impact perspective. And then the third one is called Ikenna Azuike. So he's a former lawyer and now journalist and activist, and he's really knowledgeable in everything that happens on the ground in West Africa. So yeah, in essence, the super share legally protects our 5 sourcing principles and our mission indefinitely. And we hope that it will provide other companies with inspiration as to how they think about locking in their mission. And I know that we will publish shortly a guide as to how this works in principle. But yeah, think of the entity as a foundation. The shares don't have any economic values. So it really is, I guess, the way the 3 mission guardian put it is, their boss is the mission, is the 5 sourcing principles. And it's just like really exciting because, you know, having worked for 2 B Corps before, you always have that sense of, oh, am I doing this to eventually see all the work undone with change of leadership? And so like this gives me confidence that everything that I do in the day-to-day, when I wake up every morning and I contribute to, you know, making a difference, like that's not going to get undone in 5, 10, 15 years with a possible change in leadership. So yeah, food for thoughts.
Definitely. I think it's so inspiring, and it's something that is actually quite accessible to companies as well, you know, to be able to do that. I think that the signing over of Patagonia recently that Yvonne Chenard did is amazing and so inspirational, but there's probably not going to be a huge amount of companies who are in the position or comfortable enough to make that much of a change. But something like the Tony's Mission Lock is a kind of great way to still have that security and that indefinite commitment, but while also kind of maintaining your same structure and shareholders and a bit of flexibility and who owns the business, etc. So it's really cool to see, and I hope that more companies adopt that ASAP. Okay, in a second, we're going to turn over to the audience to ask their questions. I know that there's a bunch coming through. So I just wanted to, a final question for me to both of you is, what is kind of one either piece of advice or a call to action that you'd like to share with those of us here in the audience today to support them on their own B Corp journeys?
I often get asked this, and I often just say start somewhere, because it can be quite daunting. And I've talked a lot about the fact that B Corp is quite a lot of work in getting all the certification. My favorite phrase is saying it's like someone looking through your underwear drawer and literally like going through every single bit of your business to check that you are indeed what you say you are. And that can be quite daunting, but actually if you take it little by little, and even if you're not a B Corp yet, but you're just looking at the framework which is available on the internet and say, okay, what am I doing for my workers? Because that's often the thing that's the most tangible. What parental leave am I giving them? What fertility policy am I, like what annual leave, like things that are really, really tangible that you can just get a bit of help out there on things that you won't necessarily have thought about. And even us, I think, as being a B Corp, I often talk about the most tangible examples being the ones that are the ones that make us the most proud as well at Innocent. Now, there's a lot of governance stuff that we've done, or the governance isn't where we score the highest, but it's also helped us get that side in order. But that's slightly, sometimes a bit harder to get your head around. I think sometimes it's the first steps which can be daunting, but actually when you get into it, make quite a lot of difference. So I'd just start small, be my thoughts.
I don't feel as legitimate as Emilie because I don't do the doing of the certification and the groundwork. But having, spent a lot of time talking to other B Corps and obviously having witnessed the work done by others for the past 12 years, I'd probably say patience. And I think the B Corp certification is as much about the journey itself and understanding your blind spots, understanding your business structure, like having a benchmark also for what good looks like, and kind of aiming for kind of progress in those areas that might not be considered at every step of the kind of like business decisions. So yeah, patience and involve as many, if not all, people within the business, because you'll find that sharing the weight makes everything so much better. So like there's a theme here, like, together the collective has so much power. So that would be my two tips.
Love it. Patience, collaboration, and don't be afraid to open up your underwear drawer. Beautiful. Okay, I'm gonna hand over to Andy. I think he's going to open up some questions from the audience.
Yes, thank you so much, Vlora, Emilie, and Amy, for sharing your insights and experience. And to everyone in our virtual room, if you've got burning questions you'd like to know more about, please do throw them in the chat. Going to work through a few of them here now. And I actually might ask if you're available and want to open up. Elise Quirk, you had a question. Do you want to go off mute and go ahead and ask that? Not a